Today in Canadian history for July 19th, I'm Mark Affeld. This day in 1976 marked the third day of competition during the Montreal-hosted Summer Olympic Games. These games were of note not only because they were the first ever Olympic Games hosted on Canadian soil, but also because of the complexities involved in the Games planning. In 1973, shortly after being awarded the Games, Montreal Mayor Jean Drapeau announced that they were to be the first ever self-financed Olympics. This meant that the Games would almost entirely pay for themselves, using revenue generated by the sale of Olympic coins and stamps, as well as lottery tickets. I spoke with Paul Charles Howell, a planning consultant and key player in the 1976 Montreal Olympic Organizing Committee, as well as author of the Montreal Olympics, an insider's view of organizing a self-financing Games.
Well, it looked a little bit like Drapeau wanted to do it his way, and that was fine with me. I mean, I was hired to make sure that it happened his way, and we worked very well together. But that included some things that were difficult to do. The Olympic Games themselves, let's say you wanted to stage Olympic Games as they did in Los Angeles, and you already had the stadium that you were going to use, and you just had to rent it, are really a fantastic money winner. And that's frankly the only way that's realistic to look at it. You don't build a stadium for the Olympic Games and then tear it down at the end. So Drapeau had some dreams of wonderful facilities for Montreal, and Montreal has become, physically after the subway was built and some of the downtown buildings, becomes quite a good-looking modern city. I don't think it's like Calgary or Vancouver or Sydney, Australia, mind you, but it's not half bad. And the stadium was, in his view, to be a part of that.
The stadium. Probably the most lasting image of the 76 Olympics is that Olympic Stadium. To some, it is seen as an architectural marvel. To many, it is seen as an astronomical money pit. Paul Charles Howell, a key member of the 76 Montreal Olympic Organizing Committee, explained some of the problems that plagued the original construction of the venues.
There was, as a build-up to the Games, to be, and there was, a wonderful World Cycling Championship in August 1974, 2 years before the Games. And that was going to be the first user of one of the Olympic venues that's the Biodrome today that you mentioned. That was to be ready for August 1974. But because the ground underneath it wasn't solid enough, it had to be reinforced very substantially, and the construction was going to be about 2 years late. That is, it was barely going to be ready for the Olympics. So that was the first time that and it was rather late for that, too. August 1974, we got the first big wake-up call that these big venues weren't going to happen, or they weren't going to happen on time. We couldn't get straight information about the cost, and he didn't really have straight information about the cost, frankly. He was managing them a little bit himself, without enough people. Simply, he was using Department of Public Works, which isn't built to make that kind of deadline or to build that kind of architecture. It was certainly not typical of the architecture that had been built in Montreal. Then we got a second wake-up call when we couldn't do the Olympic Village the way that he had in mind, and by then he just kind of dumped it in our lap and said, "You, the organizing committee, you know how to do everything, so you build the Olympic Village. Oh, and by the way, find the money somewhere." So that was kind of a nice extra challenge. So if you hear that the Montreal Olympics were any kind of problem, and everybody has heard that, it's all because of these three construction delays, let's call them. The Velodrome first, then the Olympic Village. Finally, in November, December 1975, Premier Bourassa, who for a variety of reasons took it upon himself to be the savior of last resort. I think he had no particular choice. Trudeau wasn't about to do it. Drapeau was unable to do it. And Canada really could not tell the world, oh, by the way, we won't be ready for the Olympic Games. So he took on the construction of the stadium in that late, like 6 months before the Games, in an almost miraculous fashion. Put in a really good team. They did a super job and got the thing ready. You'll note if you see the movie, for example, that was ready without the tower, which was not to be there anyway, and without the roof, which isn't allowed in the Olympic Games. So it was exactly what was needed for the Olympic Games, and it was superb. In fact, everything that was built was in great shape. It was an ideal setting for Olympic Games.
Today is a day full of Canadian history. In 1958, Princess Margaret opened the Okanagan Lake Bridge in Kelowna, British Columbia. Canada's first ever bilingual banknotes were issued by the Bank of Canada on this day in 1937. And Canada boycotted the Moscow Olympic Games, which opened on this day in 1980, protesting Russia's invasion of Afghanistan. And as always, we aired this episode of Today in Canadian History.
Today in Canadian History is produced by CJSW at 90.9 FM in Calgary. The executive producers are Joe Burima and Mark Affeld. Original music is provided by the Fisk, Fletcher, and May Trio. This series is not meant to be a definitive source on our past. Instead, we hope that it sparks a desire to learn more about our unique history. For more information on the series, or to recommend an event or moment, check out our website at cjsw.com/Today in Canadian History.
This has been Today in Canadian History. Until next time, keep fit and have fun.
Body Break.